Hi, and welcome to Running on Carbs Podcast. I am your host, Coach Val. Welcome to episode number 20 of the podcast. Happy to have you here today. And today we're going to talk all things half marathon and not losing your mind or your job while you're training for a half marathon. So first off, I want to start and remind you that the August drawing or contest for leaving an Apple podcast review is going on right now. So if you are to leave a podcast review on Apple Podcasts, rate it 5 stars and leave a glowing review, I hope, then you will be entered in a drawing to win an 8-week training plan that I will customize to you. So please jump over there if you're enjoying the content and you want to give a little love back. That's a great way to do it. It helps the podcast grow and helps us reach other runners and plant-based enthusiasts just like you and just like me. So hopefully you are, and you'll enter the contest and help us grow through any reviews. And of course, if you're not ready to write a review just yet, you can always subscribe to the podcast. And the more subscribers we have, of course, helps it grow. And you get notified when there's a new episode in your lineup. So anyway, with that, that's enough housekeeping. Just real quick reminder on that. I want to jump into today's topic. So half marathons, I wanted to start off with a little bit of some statistics, just a couple, but I thought they were really interesting. So in the United States, which is where I am, there are roughly 2,800 half marathons every year. And if you look around your own city or community, you might see that there's more and more, it seems like every year. So there's a ton to choose from. And with those 2,800 half marathons, there's just under 2 million participants that take part in those 2,800 half marathons. That's an incredible and staggering number if you think about it. But yet it's a small percentage still, of total population. But we're in good company. You can find a number of people who love to run the half marathon distance. And I, for one, am definitely one of them. Of the average 40-year-old female finish times, the novice runner, and the study that I was looking at, or survey I was looking at, they described a novice runner as having run at least 6 months. So they're at least 6 months, and then they run a half marathon. Their average time for a 40-year-old woman is 2 hours and 23 minutes approximately. The intermediate runner, a 40-year-old female, finishes a half marathon in about 2 hours and 4 minutes. And they described an intermediate runner as running at least 2 years. And remember, these are averages. So they take the whole pie of all the runners, and then they, divide that out by, or they take all the time and then they divide it out by the number of runners for each category. So they're just getting an average. So there's going to be some who are much higher and some who are lower, but they're just averaging out these times. So the advanced runner is someone that has been running for at least 5 years, so maybe longer, but at minimum 5 years. And the average time for a 40-year-old woman in that category is 1 hour and 49 minutes. I found these numbers very interesting. I'm outside of this range, but I know that a lot of our listeners are right there in the 40-year-old range. And it's interesting, as you get older, you might not be surprised that the times tend to go down. But I also find that, you have a new runner advantage in some cases. So I think the novice and even the intermediate runner can sometimes see their times personally really increase with their training and with their consistency. So these are just averages. You might be faster, you might be slower, but I thought it laid a good foundation for just some interesting statistics about half marathons. As far as the training time, the average half marathon training time is usually between 12 and 14 weeks for a novice or a beginner. And that's about right. That's about what I write my plans at. They're usually about 12 weeks and maybe a couple extra weeks if you need to plan for vacations or other things. And then an intermediate or an advanced runner, they can shorten that plan slightly. And maybe they can do a 6 to 10 week plan depending on, their starting fitness or their current running volume. That's a big indicator. And then, of course, race goals. So if you're just looking to finish the race, you might not have to train quite as long if you're an intermediate or advanced runner. Maybe you ran a half marathon fairly recently and you just want to run this one for fun. You're not really looking for a PR. You may not have to have such a long training plan. You may not certainly need that full 12-week plan, but you want to still run the race and have fun doing it. So this is why I think half marathons are the perfect distance for a professional woman. So if you are a professional woman and you are busy and you have a hectic schedule with work expectations, home responsibilities, then the half marathon is a fantastic distance for someone who still wants to really work on endurance racing. Number one, the midweek runs are manageable. So a midweek run, like in my, I have a race plan that I put together just for purchase on Final Surge, and it's for beginner runners and who just want to finish the race. So it's called Get Me to the Finish Line. And it maxes out for midweek runs at 6 miles. And that's like the peak of the training plan. So running a half marathon plan doesn't have to be as time consuming as like a marathon plan would be, because marathon plans, your midweek runs can get up pretty high as far as number of miles and time commitment. But a half marathon, they don't have to be quite as time consuming. You might find that you're doing the majority of your midweek runs are maybe anywhere from like 3 to 4 to 5 miles. And for someone who's fairly accustomed to running, or even a novice runner, that's, there might be some time commitment as you reach the peak of your training plan where you're running those 5 and 6 miles before work. But they're still somewhat manageable if you have scheduling and if you know they're coming and you can plan for them. So definitely more manageable for a half marathon. The intermediate plan, you might be doing like a 5 mile to 8 mile midweek run. And if you're intermediate, that again might take a little bit extra planning on your part to make sure that you have the time for it. But you're not doing that the entire 12 weeks. You're talking about maybe, I don't know, a 2 or 3 week time period where you're really at the peak of your half marathon training. So it's just a matter of scheduling and looking at that. Also, a half marathon plan is much shorter than a full marathon plan, whereas a half marathon plan, you're looking at maybe about 12 weeks roughly. And a full marathon, you're looking at maybe 18 to 20 weeks, depending again on where you are. But, on average, 18 to 20 weeks for a full marathon versus 12 for a half. So definitely more manageable and able to fit in your schedule maybe a little better. I love the half marathon training because it's really a great way to increase your fitness without too much volume. So as a runner who's kind of newer to running or that is just building up the endurance side, it's a great goal distance to have. And without building up so much volume that you're really fatigued and difficulty functioning for the rest of the day. So we've all been there. That's why we put long runs on days when we don't have to work, as hopefully. Long runs on a half marathon plan, they're going to cap somewhere between 10 and 12 miles, usually for like a novice. Even an intermediate plan might cap at about 12 miles. And then, of course, your more advanced plans, you're going to have more mileage on your long run, because usually with an advanced plan, you're not just looking to finish, you're looking to have the endurance to be, very strong at the end, and probably have some type of pace goal. With an intermediate plan, you can have a pace goal, but it's not as strict as an advanced plan. And then for a novice, especially a first-time half marathoner, it's good just to, maybe in the back of your mind, have some sort of range, like a pace range that you hope to finish in, or goal range, goal finish time range, but not to train for that, because you're really just trying to get to the finish line in a healthy manner, uninjured, and enjoy the process. I mean, nobody wants to just like kill themselves in a half marathon getting to the finish line. You want to feel strong. It should be, if it's a first half marathon, it'll probably be challenging, but it should also be doable. So some considerations to think about before you start your training. Number one, are you healthy enough to train? This is really key. And this is something that I personally am kind of weighing back and forth, and I wouldn't say struggling with, but it's definitely something I'm contemplating right now. So for those that do know, last year, almost just over a year ago, I was injured and turned out to be a femoral neck stress fracture in my hip. And I was on crutches for 9 weeks, and I was out of running for 9 months. It was a long process, and I am still getting back into it. And although I've been off of crutches and back to activity, I've really only been back to high impact activity for maybe, I think, since mid-April. So was that May, June, July, August, like 4 months. So I'm weighing whether or not I'm ready to start a half marathon training plan. And if I do decide to do it, it'll be probably, I plan to use my own plan, the Get Me to the Finish Line plan, because that's really ideally suited to new runners or to newer runners. And that's really where my fitness level is at the moment, based on that long recovery time that I had. So if I do the half marathon plan, it'll be something like that. That's very gradual, and literally it's all easy running. So it's just to get me to build up endurance, or for anybody that wants to use that plan, it's to build the endurance and time on feet, and the commitment to 4 days a week of running, because right now I'm doing 3 days a week of running. So it bumps up 1 day without bumping up mileage too much, because it spreads it out over 4 days rather than 3. So anyway, it's very gradual progression, and it maxes out at like 25 miles a week. So it's not a huge volume. So it's very good for someone who is returning to running or is a novice runner, only been running for a short period of time. And it's literally get you to the finish line. So get you from point A to 13.1. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about myself right now. And I'm trying to decide, am I healthy enough to train, not just run on my own, but to actually train? And so that's something that you should consider as well if you're thinking about a half marathon. Have you had any injuries or health issues? Have you had any illnesses maybe recently that may impact your lung capacity or your overall health? If you've had any fevers or anything recently, just have you recovered, and are you ready to start a training plan? So something to consider. Another thing to consider for you busy professionals is, do you have any major commitments over the next 3 months? So remember, you're going to be training for probably a 12-week plan. We're just going to assume it's a 12-week plan. And so do you have travel that you need to account for, and work commitments? Do you have major projects coming up that are going to keep you, at work for long hours? Because when you're training, you need to make sure that you have the energy. And if you know that you have this, massive work project coming up, you're changing over all your computer systems and you are the one in charge. Um, some major project that is on the books that's going to take you away, or even just add a bunch of stress to your life and you're aware of it. It doesn't mean you can't train for the half marathon. For some people, it might be a great stress reliever, but you have to know where you are with that, and if your stress level can take it. And I think if you start training and you realize this is too much, you have to know that so that you can back off. It's best to back off a bit rather than push through, because if you push through, you could be causing injury. And, obviously that's what we want to avoid. So you really want to make sure you're paying attention if you've got a very stressful job, or if you're coming into a very high stress time in your job. Also take into account vacations. So if you're going to go on any vacations during that time period, because 3 months, it's like you're in summertime, or now you're getting into the fall. If you're going to train for a winter marathon or fall/winter, depending on where you are in the country. I'm in Southern California, so we run year round. So if you're in a place that you run year round, you may be doing a winter marathon or half marathon. Then you want to consider, holiday vacations and things like that. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You just want to account for it. You just want to be aware so you don't have any surprises. So the next thing to consider is, have you been running consistently? Do you have what's called a base? Where are you starting from? Are you starting from zero? Are you doing like couch to half marathon, which I don't recommend, because part of my coaching philosophy is to build gradually. So couch to half marathon sounds rather extreme. I think having a good base foundation of running consistently is very important. You don't have to have a lot of volume or mileage, but just consistency. So are you running 3 days a week on a consistent basis, 3 to 5 miles, something like that? Where are you? And are you consistent with it? If you're running, 1 day this week and 4 days the next week, and, not at all the week after, that's not consistent. And that is going to be detrimental to your training once you start your plan. Next thing is, how many days a week do you have to train? As I mentioned earlier, the Get Me to the Finish Line plan that I have is 4 days a week. You can train on 3 days a week if you're willing to do some heavy duty cross training in there. But even that 4 days a week plan that I have incorporates a day of cross training. So you would have to be doing a couple of days of really intense cross training to make sure that you have the cardiovascular capacity to run that half marathon if you're only going to run 3 days versus 4. And there could be some reasons for wanting to run 3 versus 4. Maybe you do have an injury that you're working through. You're, able to run, you're cleared to run, but that 4th day just pushes you over the edge. And so cross training allows you to do that. There's a good reason for scaling back on the running and the impact. And there are things that you can do and still run the half. But I think, again, you need to be aware of what are your limitations and what are you working within. The next thing that kind of goes along with that is, how many hours a week are you able to train? And so this would include those cross training days, and it would also include your strength training days. Strength training is absolutely key in order to maintain good form and strength and power, and to not get injured. So injury prevention, you want to make sure that you're really keeping everything strong and mobile as you are training. So let's maximize your training and race success. Number 1, stick to your schedule. I think that a lot of you probably do that. I think when you are a very busy professional woman and you're in especially if you're in some type of corporate position, something like that, or even an entrepreneur running your own business, you probably are pretty good with your schedule, is my guess. And also, I know runners are such type A people to begin with. But not all of us are great with a plan. I personally love a plan, but I know lots of people who are like, I'm just going to go out and run and see what I can do. Um, Probably not listening to this podcast. I don't know. Maybe you are. But stick to your training schedule. So if you have a training plan, stick to it. Number one, calendar it in, and don't skip your strength training. Even if you have to abbreviate some things, like in your strength training, if you find that you've got an early morning meeting and you just simply don't have the time for all of it in one day, you can try to divvy it up. That's one great option. So if you are able to do something in the morning and then something else in the evening after work, that's great. That's a great way to do it. There's enough time in between there that you're not going to overload. But if you can't and you have to do it all at the same time, I run into this quite often. Just do an abbreviated version of your strength training. So maybe instead of doing 3 sets, you're going to do 1 or 2. Or maybe instead of doing 15 reps on some endurance movement, you're going to cut it down to 10. So just do something abbreviated, but try to fit in as much as you can. And hopefully this is just an occasional occurrence and it's not happening every single week. Masters runners. So masters runners are runners that are over 40. Don't ignore niggles and pain. And I do think that you should do your cross training at least once a week, preferably once a week. And again, like I was saying earlier, you may incorporate more than one day of cross training, but at least once a week, have a cross training day. It's really important to take the load off of our bodies when we are masters runners. We want to give those ligaments and tendons and everything a little break and from the impact. So spin bike is great, rowing, pool jogging. That's something that I like to do sometimes too. But anyway, get your cross training in. And then, like I started to say, don't ignore niggles or pain. If you start to get any discomfort, like after a run, then you want to make sure that you're getting in your recovery. Recovery is absolutely key, especially for our masters runners. Have at least one full rest day a week. And going back to my plan, the Get Me to the Finish Line plan, there's actually 2 rest days built into that. And the reason for that is that I've put in 2 rest days because I incorporated the strength training on shorter run days. So the shorter run days are maybe a half an hour of a run. So there's a bit of time. I usually like to figure about an hour-ish during the week for a workout, for running or for strength or whatever. So there's strength training and a run on the same day, a couple days a week. And that allows an individual who's following that plan to have 2 full days of rest. And those are days you can maybe schedule your meetings if you can do that. But it gives you a little more time and flexibility with your plan. So again, you can run your half marathon, enjoy the training process, and keep your job at the same time. Train your gut. Okay, so this is another one when you are training. Half marathon is a distance that needs to be respected. Marathon absolutely needs to be respected, and sometimes I think that kind of goes without saying. But the half marathon can be kind of underrated as far as training is concerned. I don't know why. When I first heard about a half marathon distance, I was rather intimidated by it. And but some people look at the half marathon and think that they can just go out and run it and not have to train or not have to train their gut. But you need to fuel for a half marathon, especially if you're going to be out there for some period of time. Try practicing with gels or with fuel on shorter weekly runs. So on your midweek runs, when you're out, even if you're just going out for maybe a 4 mile run during the week, take with you a gel and maybe if you're using gels, and so take it with you and maybe take it about halfway through, maybe 3/4 of the way through. You're not really using it for the energy purpose, really, unless you didn't eat much to begin with before you left the house, in which case you will probably need that energy. But really, what you're doing is you are training your gut to take in fuel while you are running. And it's good to do that on short runs because, number one, if you aren't accustomed to fueling, if this is one of your first races, or if this is the first race that you are learning to fuel while training for, you want to make sure that you are on a shorter run when you try these things, because if you have any stomach upset or anything, you're going to want to know about it when you're not, 4 miles, 5 miles, 8 miles away from home. So, or worse, like if you had to drive to wherever you are. So it could be even worse. I know some of the places that I run, there's no restrooms. So it could be disastrous if you have an issue, stomach issue or something, and you're trying the gels for the first time on a long run and you're just out and about somewhere. So oftentimes I think people will do their shorter midweek runs closer to home. And so that's a great time to try out your gels or whatever fuel you're going to use for your runs, and make sure that you're training your gut, as it's called, to take in fuel and that it's not upsetting. It's also good practice to learn to take in gels, maybe without a walk break. So while you're running, can you get the gel out? Can you open it up and consume it? Drink your water to flush it down, and just getting used to that motion and having it become second nature, so that when you're in a race environment, you don't have to give up any time, opening up gels and stopping and trying to grab water. Although definitely grab water in a race, but my point is that you're not having to stop and really focus on what you're doing and waste energy. You want to learn to do it on the run so you're much more efficient. Okay, so training decisions. Let's determine your half marathon goal. And you may or may not have a specific goal in mind for a half marathon. Simply finishing the half marathon is a goal in and of itself. And I think that's a very respectable goal. As a matter of fact, when I run my half marathon, my next half marathon, that is my goal. My goal is to finish. And I'm saying that as a previously injured runner coming back to running. Sometimes that is the goal. The goal is just get me to the finish line, which is why I wrote that plan. So, um, so get you to the finish line is a goal. If it's your first race, I think that's a very good goal to have. As a matter of fact, that would be my recommendation, is if this is your very first half marathon, even if you've been running, having a pace goal, you may not know what to set. And if you've never run that distance before, or if you've only run it maybe in training once or twice ever, then having a finish goal is perfectly fine. If you've done several half marathons and now maybe now you're practicing your fueling like we were just talking about, but you've done other half marathons and now you want to up level. You want to get better. Maybe you want a PR, which is, you want a new personal record time. And so you're really doing this half marathon for a time goal. That's awesome. So whatever your goal is, make sure you establish that goal and you know what it is you're going for. That will help you work backward for your training plan. The next thing to consider is, if you are going for a time goal, are you ready for speed work? And again, beginners, there are some speed workouts that you can do if you are strong enough. So some novice runners or beginner runners, they come to the sport with a lot of fitness. And so they still need to work their muscles and to train their muscles and tendons to take on the impact of running specific work. But you might be ready for some of the more flexible, as I call them, speed work, things like tempo runs. Tempo runs are great because they're not super fast. They are just simply getting your speed up a little bit, and it teaches you to control your pace. And so tempo runs are great speed work to do for a beginner runner. Also, strides within your midweek run. So, like your midweek long run is a good time to do strides. Strides are very simple. No need to overcomplicate strides. It's simply about, I don't know, 10 seconds or, about 10 seconds, 100 feet, something like that, of, or not 100 feet, sorry, point 0.1. I do, on my watch, I set it as like point 0.1 miles. So I don't know what that is in feet, but very short. So maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds worth of faster running. And you do that in your midweek long run because you want to have enough time to do plenty of easy running. And then just within that, you're going to do some short, fast running. And this is not sprinting. This is just simply faster pace than you were doing during your typical long run pace. Easy. Along those same lines is a fartlek run, and that's Fartlek, fartlek. It is a Swedish word, and it means speed play. And the idea of a fartlek is you can be somewhat structured, but the real idea of a fartlek is to make it unstructured. So hence the word play. So unstructured speed work. And a great way to incorporate a fartlek run in your training plan is to have something a little shorter. So it's a little shorter run for a beginner. And you just set different goals as you're running along. So it's very flowing. So if you like a real flowing type, easy, not easy, but easy to work with run, then fartleks are great because they're just very in the moment. That's the word. That's the phrase I was looking for. In the moment run. So you just do what you feel, I think, with a fartlek, at least in the way I like to do fartleks. Again, you can make them structured, but I prefer them to be much more free flowing. So with a fartlek, you pick something in the distance, a landmark in the distance, mailbox, a house, maybe the corner where you're going to cross. You pick something in the distance and you pick up the pace and run to that destination. When you get there, then you back off the pace and you go back to your easy run. And so you do your easy run for another distance, pick something else in the far off future distance, and then run to that. And these things are fairly short. But you can do all sorts of things. You can use your watch even. So you might be running easy for a while, and then you look at your watch and you do, okay, I'm going to do a quarter mile at 10 seconds faster pace than what I'm doing at my easy run. And so you pick up the pace and you try to hold that pace for your quarter mile. So there's lots of different variations that you can do, which is why the word play. So there is no right or wrong way to do a fartlek, in my opinion. It's supposed to be unstructured. And so you decide what it is that you want to do on that day. I've had a lot of fun with fartlek runs that I've done during training. I usually do them in exactly this manner. I just make them very unstructured. And sometimes I'll do a quarter mile at one distance or one speed, and then I'll do a very short, like real fast, almost sprint, but not quite, just for maybe 2 houses. And then I'll back off and do easy running for a mile or 2. And it just depends on how long my run is. but it's fun to get that turnover in your legs, and it's good for the cardiovascular system, especially if you're going to be doing, some heavy, faster running for short bursts. Then your body and your heart and your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, everything gets used to, ramping up and then coming back to your easy pace. And so it gets used to going up and down and and leveling out. So that's a good sign of fitness is how fast can you recover. And so the idea with some of this fartlek running is not so much the running itself, the fast running itself, but it's the recovery afterward. How quickly can you recover? How long can you maintain your recovery? And then do it again. So fartleks are a really great way to introduce some speed work if you're a beginner runner. For intermediate and advanced runners, you can do some long runs with pace work. So if you're doing a long run, you can incorporate your half-mile pace within it for periods of time. Intervals are another great speed work for intermediate and advanced runners. So you might be doing some, you could do different ones. So 800s are always great, although I hate 800s, but I do them, and I do write them into plans also. They are, 800s can be a long run, or they can be for long runs, or they can be for shorter runs. Just depends on your pacing on them. So 800 meters. I like to do some 400 meters just because they're fun. And I think that there is a time and a place for 400 meters in a half marathon training plan, especially if you're going for time. So they're great again for the speed and then also the recovery afterward from each interval. And then good old classic hill repeats. So finding a hill, running up, and coming back down. So you can do short hill repeats, or if you know you have a half marathon with a lot of hills in it, then long hill repeats can be very valuable for your training, because you do want to try to train to prepare you for the terrain that you're going to be running on race day. So if you know there's hills in your race, then training with hills is really important. And that can be important for beginners too, but I do caution beginners not to do too much hill work if you can help it. Maybe some easier hill work where maybe you can run walk it if you're really a beginner. We don't want to get you injured on hills if your body is not quite ready for it mechanically. All right, so said a lot so far. Let's take a breath, take a breather. How do we fit it all in? Like, okay, Coach Val, you've said a bunch of stuff here. There's a lot to do, but how do I fit it all in to my busy schedule? That's what I'm here for. So we're going to go over that. Number one, calendar your workouts. So key. Calendar the workouts just as if it was a meeting. But this meeting is with you, and it is with your future self who wants to run this half marathon. And having this goal, this big personal goal of yours, is just as important as any meeting that you might attend during a workday. And you must keep that appointment with yourself, because that half marathon is really important. It's for you, and you have to take care of yourself, and you have to have goals, and you have to have, personal interests and hobbies, and you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of everyone else around you. So don't let your personal goals go because you know you have to take care of everyone else. You can do both, but make sure that it's calendared and that you are treating it like a meeting, and you are just as important as anybody else on your calendar. One way to help you keep your nutrition up while you're training is to prep your food for the week. And this takes a little learning. So it's part of what I do in my nutrition coaching on portion of my business. Is helping to teach women how to food prep or meal prep for the week. So prepping, I'm not going to go into the whole prepping conversation here, but for example, if you know that lunches are your downfall, and if you don't have lunch, then you're going to just go out, or you're not going to eat, or you're going to grab snack bars, then I think you should prioritize meal prepping your lunches for the week. So if you have those kind of meals, start there. If you're not accustomed to meal prepping, just pick one or two meals or a meal and a snack, and then you can, prep the rest of your meals on, that day if those are not issues for you. But definitely do some meal prepping, because this is going to help you immensely when it comes to fueling and making sure that you have enough energy to do your runs in the morning. Well, I'm assuming you're going to do them in the morning. You might do them a different part of the day, but it doesn't matter. Whenever you do your runs, you need to be fueled. The next thing is to lay everything out. So if you're going to be running in the morning, make sure everything's laid out the night before. Everything from like filling your water bottle. If you put I put my ID and my key fob in my water bottle case and carry that with me. Make sure everything's all packed, ready to go. Put your gear together, like your shoes. If it's, in the morning early, maybe it's dark still. So make sure you have your light gear for your runs, everything out, ready to go. You might also want to set out your pre-run snack, whatever that might be, or at least have it prepped and ready to go. I do red beets with vinegar in the morning. I know everyone's like, what? Red beets? But I have a whole episode where I talk about running fuel. You can listen to that one. and I explain the beets in that episode. So anyway, I'll pre-package or pre-weigh, I suppose, my beets, and I'll have them in a container in the refrigerator. So they're just grab and go. And I can just grab it, put the vinegar on it, eat a snack. So whatever I can do to shorten the prep time in the morning before a run, that's what I do. Program your watch. If you've got a workout that you're going to be doing that's specific, program your watch, have it all ready to go. Here's the key thing though. So a real easy way to get derailed in the morning and find out that you don't have enough time for your full run is to open your email on your phone in the morning before your run. Don't do it. You are not working yet. So this is your time. Don't open your email, because you will get derailed, because then you're going to start answering email. Oh, I could just answer this one. Or, I'll just, see what's in here, if there's anything urgent. Well, yes, of course, there's something urgent in there. So don't look at it. Okay. Take this time, do your run, come back, and then look at your email. This also, by the way, goes for social media. If you find that you get derailed by social media, don't open your social media before your run. You don't want to get distracted. You want to get out there, get it done, because you are a busy person and you need to get all this stuff done so that you can go on with the rest of your day. We're talking about fitting it all in right now. Okay. So these are time-saving tips for you. If you do have any ancillary responsibilities, like I have to feed all the animals and I have to give my dog his eye drops in the morning, which takes like 15 minutes because you have to wait between each drop. I plan that out and make sure that I have everything ready to go. I know where it is. Put the food out, so all I got to do is just pick it up and open it, things like that. So just kind of put stuff out together, so you're not walking around looking for it in the kitchen and like, oh, what the heck was I looking for? Because it is like 4:30 in the morning, maybe. Make your life easy the night before, so that when you're up early in the morning, things are much easier for you. Plan time for your warm-up and any activation exercises that you do. You definitely need to plan ahead for that and make sure you have enough time. This is where I get derailed personally, is the warm-up and the activations. They always take me longer than I think they're going to. So mentally prepare. So once you're done with that and you're like, okay, I'm ready to walk out the door, The last thing you need to do, and this shouldn't take much time, but I think it's very important. You need to mentally prepare for the miles that you're about to run, whether it's 3 miles or 11 miles, whatever it is. Just mentally prepare for that mileage and know the purpose of your run and what it is that you're going to be doing that day. So, of course, if you're following a training plan, you should have it right on your calendar and it's going to say you're doing 4 miles today, or you're doing your long run today, you're doing 9 miles today, and know what you're going to do and mentally prepare for that mileage. While you're running the miles, sometimes it's not so much that you're tired from the miles, like your body's not really tired, but you're mentally tired. And this can definitely happen during half marathon training, especially if you are not accustomed to running longer distances. Maybe these are the longest distances you've ever run. And you're going to find possibly that while you're running these miles, it's like, well, my body can keep going, but I'm really bored, like absolutely bored out of your mind. And then when your mind gets bored, it starts making you want to stop. So it kicks in and it starts giving you all sorts of these little excuses and it tries to tell you that your body's tired. But if you really stop and think about it, you're still going. So you're not really tired. So unless you look at your watch and you've got sky high heart rate or you can't catch breath, you're probably okay. And most of these miles, even if you're an intermediate runner, most of these miles are going to be your easy run pace. So you shouldn't be wiped out, fatigued, unless you're doing a specific workout. So do some mental math. This helps a lot. So I heard this on another podcast, and I also do this myself. So when you're running your miles, you think, oh, I'm, a third of the way through. Yay. And then when you get about halfway through those miles for the day, you're like, yay, I'm halfway through, only whatever, 2 miles to go, whatever it is. So do some little mental math, helps a lot. And it also keeps you active and your mind active too. Podcasts and audiobooks, music, all those things help immensely. But just safety first if you're going to do that. So I use aftershocks, or I guess they're called shocks, headphones, which are bone conducting headphones. And those are really great because I can hear what's going on around me in my environment, and I can hear my podcast or music or whatever's in my headphones. So those are really fantastic. But whatever you use, some people just put one earbud in and have the other one out so they can hear what's going on. Make sure you're aware of your surroundings, but at the same time, music, podcasts, audiobooks, all those things, great distractors that just keep you active. But if you do that, every once in a while, especially if you're running in a really beautiful place, for even if you're just running in your neighborhood, it's such a nice idea to pause your music or whatever is coming through your headphones. Just pause it and hear your footsteps and listen to your breath, listen to your footsteps, listen to what's going on around you. I've done that before running in the early morning, like before dawn in my neighborhood. And one morning there were owls and they were talking back and forth or hooting back and forth. And I could hear them for the longest time just based on where I was running. And it was so beautiful. And if I would have had my headphones on and going at that time, I would have completely missed them. I don't even know if I would have heard them with my bone conducting headphones. So every once in a while, just pause it and listen to your surroundings and what's going on around you and appreciate the beauty of your everyday environment of wherever you are. I think even if you're in a city and you're hearing the cars and the people, there's still a beauty to it. There's still a worldly beauty to the chaos that's going on around you as you are so focused and zoned in on your own body and your own running. So It's all about perspective, right? So taking a different perspective for your running and being very mindful is such a great help to get you through those long miles. And also, lastly, don't forget to visualize yourself in your run. So, as you take a moment and you pause your headphones, visualize yourself at your race, whatever race that you choose, whether you've done it before or not, or you have any idea what it looks like in real life. Imagine what it would look like. Imagine the runners around you and taking in the sights of your race, the excitement, the cowbells going off around, people cheering, maybe someone's yelling your name. And then picture yourself coming across that finish line at the end of your half marathon, especially if this is your first. But I tell you, I've run several half marathons and it is exciting every single time I've crossed that finish line. So picture yourself coming toward that finish line. As you're coming toward it, you can see the big banner in the future, in the distance, as you're coming up to it. And you're getting closer and closer and closer. There's runners that you're passing. There's runners that are passing you. You're kind of looking out. Okay, where do I go? Is there, a left or a right here? Where am I going? And just feeling the excitement. And maybe you do a little kick at the end. Maybe don't do that in training though. But if you're doing your strides, it's a great time to imagine during your strides that you're doing your last kick across the finish line. So use the strides to make that visualization. Like, this is what it'll feel like when I'm running across that finish line and I give it a one last kick so I can pick up a few extra seconds on my finish time. But visualize yourself and think about how you're going to feel during the race, because it gets you excited for your training. Because honestly, training over a 12-week period of time can sometimes get kind of daunting and kind of boring or just kind of repetitive. So, it's like, okay, well, I'm going out for another 4-mile run today. So the visualization and remembering the goal and remembering the end result and why you're doing all of this, and then take a look back. Once you're, halfway through or 3/4 of the way through your plan, take a look back and remember where you started. You might have started this plan as a brand new beginner endurance runner, because I don't want you being a brand new couch to half marathon, remember? So, but look back where you started in your plan. How did you feel then? And how do you feel now? True, you might be tired because as you get further along in your training, your distance is going to increase, the volume is going to increase, so your legs are going to be more tired. But how's your cardiovascular system? How's your respiratory system? How's your heart rate? All of these things are likely to be improving by this point. How do you feel like at this distance? Could you have run this in the beginning? Or is this a new distance for you? Have you reached a new peak for yourself? There's a lot of exciting things that happen during a half marathon training plan, and you definitely deserve it. As a busy professional, you absolutely can incorporate this into your day. There are all sorts of ways to do it. If you need a plan, you can check out Final Surge. My plan is on Final Surge. If you go to the show notes, there's a link in the show notes that'll take you to my page, and you can check out the half marathon plan there that I have for beginner runners or returning runners. If you want a more customized plan, or if you're more interested in one-to-one coaching, or you just really want to customize to your schedule, maybe you have a funky schedule that a pre-programmed plan is just not going to work for, and that, then let me know. Reach out again in the show notes. There's a link you can set up on my calendar, a 20-minute call, and we can just go over your circumstances and what that looks like. And then we can see if there's a good way to work with each other and with your schedule. And then if you are more interested in the plant-based nutrition coaching, that can also be incorporated into your training plan as well. So that would be more customized one-to-one training. All right, everyone. If you want to reach out to me, I am on Instagram at running.on.carbs. Again, everything's in the show notes. So take a look at that. If you want to reach out and connect, everything's there. I'd love to connect with you. If you are not on Instagram with me, please connect there. I'd love to hear from you. All right, everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day. And don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. This is Running on Carbs Podcast. I will see you next time.